5 years ago, my world shattered. My now wife cheated on me with her ex, the man she had loved before I entered the picture. When I found out, it felt like the air had been sucked from my lungs, like I had been blindsided by a freight train with no chance of bracing for impact. The pain was suffocating, unbearable. At first, I didn't know how to react. Anger, heartbreak, confusion, they all crashed into me at once. How could she do this? How could someone who swore she loved me betray me in such a gut-wrenching way? For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I felt like a shadow of myself, questioning everything I had ever believed about our relationship. I was ready to walk away. In fact, I had one foot out the door. There was no coming back from this. Or at least, that's what I thought. But then, she begged me to stay. She cried like I had never seen before, sobbing so hard that she could barely form words. She clung to me, whispering desperate apologies through her tears. She swore it had been a mistake, that it meant nothing, that she had been caught in a moment of weakness. She promised to do anything, to prove that I was the one she truly loved. Against my better judgment, I let her back in. Rebuilding trust after betrayal is like trying to glue shattered glass together. You might manage to piece it back, but it'll never be the same. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. Every time she left the house, I wondered where she was going. Every time she picked up her phone, I wondered who she was texting. I hated feeling like that, like a paranoid, insecure version of myself. But how could I not? She tried everything to show she was committed. She gave me full access to her phone, let me know where she was at all times, reassured me endlessly. And slowly, I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, we had gotten past it. We moved forward. We got engaged. We got married. I told myself that what we had was strong enough to survive, that love was enough to mend what had been broken. I thought we had finally put the past behind us. Then I found the pictures. It was such an ordinary day. Lately, we'd been dealing with a spider problem in the house. I was going around checking corners, opening drawers, just making sure nothing was lurking where it shouldn't be. I wasn't searching for anything other than pests. I had no reason to suspect that I was about to stumble upon something far worse than a spider. I told my wife it'd be moving things around, reorganizing. She nodded, barely looking up from whatever she was doing. Then, I opened that drawer. A small, almost insignificant space in one of our cabinets. And there they were. A neat stack of photos. Of him. My stomach dropped. My fingers trembled as I flipped through them, one by one. Photos of her and her ex, smiling, hugging, wrapped up in a past that was supposed to be buried. It felt like a cruel joke. For a second, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe these were from years ago, mixed in with old keepsakes. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't what it looked like. But then I realized something. The drawer contained nothing else. No other photos. No random mementos. Just these. She had packed them. She had carried them. She had placed them in this house. In our house. It wasn't an accident. I stood there for what felt like hours, my mind racing. Every ounce of pain and doubt I had fought to push down over the years came surging back in full force. Had I been a fool all along? Had she ever truly let go of him? Was I just a placeholder for the man she actually wanted? I heard footsteps. She entered the room and froze the second she saw what I was holding. Her face turned ghostly pale. Where did you find those? She stammered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She rushed toward me, already panicking. I I didn't know those were still here. I must have forgotten about them. Please, you have to believe me. I let out a bitter laugh. Forgot? You forgot you packed a stack of pictures of your ex and put them in our house? She shook her head frantically. I swear, I had no idea. I cut her off. Don't insult me by lying right now. She started crying, but this time, I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything. That night, I couldn't sleep next to her. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind a whirlwind of anger and exhaustion. She had already betrayed me once. Had she done it again? And worse, did it even matter anymore? The next morning, I told her I needed space. I didn't phrase it as a breakup. Not yet. But I made it clear I needed to be alone, to think, to figure out what I really wanted. I booked a trip. Nothing fancy. Just a familiar city, a place where I had lived before I met her. Somewhere that still felt like mine. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. I wasn't worrying about whether I was making the right choice. I wasn't suffocating under the weight of trying to fix something that might have been broken beyond repair from the start. I was just free. While I was gone, people asked me if I thought she had cheated again, if she had stayed faithful during those days apart. And you know what? I realized I didn't care. That's when I knew it was truly over. It didn't matter whether she had been faithful or not. What mattered was that I no longer had any desire to fight for this relationship. When I returned home, I hoped she would be gone. Not because I hated her, not because I wanted revenge, but because it would have saved me the pain of saying the words out loud. Unfortunately, she was still there, waiting, hopeful, clinging to the possibility that time apart had made me see things differently. But time hadn't changed a thing. I sat her down and told her the truth. I'm done. She gasped. No, please. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, we can't. Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't budge. I had given her a second chance once. I had convinced myself that love was enough. But trust? Trust was something that, once broken, could never be fully restored. And she had broken it twice. This time, I wasn't going to let her beg me to stay. This time, I was walking away for good. She cried. She begged. She said we should go to marriage counseling, that we should fight for our love, for the life we built. She clung to me like I was her last lifeline, her fingers digging into my shirt as if holding on tight enough could undo everything. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold her back either. I just stood there, watching as she unraveled before me, the woman I once loved turning into a stranger in front of my eyes. I told her the truth. I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't even care enough to try. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just indifferent. And that's when I realized something important. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. Hate means you still feel something, that a part of you is still tangled in the mess of emotions and memories. But indifference? That's emptiness. That's knowing deep in your bones that there is nothing left to salvage, that whatever fire once burned between you has been reduced to cold ashes. I saw it in her eyes, the moment she understood. The moment she felt the weight of my words settle into her chest like a stone. There was no room for hope in my voice. No hesitation. Just the undeniable truth. We had a long talk that night. one filled with painful truths and quiet moments where neither of us knew what to say. She asked me if I ever really loved her. That question should have hurt me, but it didn't. Yes, I told her. I did. But love alone isn't always enough. Eventually, she accepted my decision. There was no more yelling, no more pleading, just a quiet resignation, a bitter acknowledgement that this was the end of us. And with that, we started the divorce proceedings. I kept the pictures, the proof of her betrayal, the undeniable evidence that she had broken what was once sacred. I met with a lawyer before I even got back home, figuring the photos might be useful if things got ugly. But deep down, I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted out. I wanted my freedom. Looking back, maybe I should have left her years ago. Maybe I was too blinded by love, too hopeful that people could change, that trust could be fully rebuilt after being shattered. Maybe I was just scared of starting over, of facing the unknown without the familiarity of what we once were. But now, I don't regret walking away. Because the truth is, if someone truly values you, they don't hold on to remnants of a past that once destroyed you. They don't cling to memories of a person they swore was out of their life. They don't lie, even through omission. They don't make you feel like an afterthought in your own marriage. And I deserved better than that. People always say that love is about forgiveness, about choosing each other even when it's hard. And for a long time, I believed that. I believed that love meant endurance, that if you loved someone enough, you could weather any storm, survive any betrayal. I told myself that her mistake was just that, a mistake, that we could move past it. And for a while, we did. Or at least, I thought we did. But what people don't tell you is that love isn't just about forgiveness. It's about trust. It's about knowing, without a shadow of a doubt, that the person beside you is someone who will always choose you, even when no one else is watching. She failed that test. And I failed myself by staying as long as I did. The days after I left were strange. The silence of my new apartment was both a relief and a weight I wasn't used to carrying. I had spent years in a house filled with shared memories, with the sound of her voice greeting me when I came home, with the warmth of her presence beside me in bed. Now it was just me. For the first time in years, I didn't have to check in with anyone. I didn't have to wonder what mood she'd be in when I got home, or if she'd be hiding something behind forced smiles and half-truths. I didn't have to pretend anymore. And yet, I found myself staring at my phone more than I should have, expecting a text, a call, something. But she didn't reach out, and neither did I. I think we both knew there was nothing left to say. People say that time heals all wounds, but I think time just gives you space to see things more clearly. At first, there was anger at her, at myself, at the universe for wasting so many years on something that was doomed from the moment she betrayed me. Then came the sadness, the heavy realization that even though I had moved on, I had still lost something. Not just a relationship, but the version of myself who believed in her, who believed in us. And then, finally, came acceptance. I stopped looking at love as something I had failed at. I stopped measuring my worth by the way someone else had treated me. I stopped letting her actions define me. I started rebuilding. I went back to the things I loved, things I had neglected in the name of being a good husband. I reconnected with old friends, started going to the gym again, picked up hobbies I had long forgotten. I rediscovered myself outside of her. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I'll find love again, or if I'll even want to try. Right now, the idea of opening myself up to someone else, of being vulnerable again, still feels foreign, like an old wound that hasn't fully healed, a scar that still aches when touched. I used to believe that love could conquer all, that if you just held on long enough, fought hard enough, things would work out. But life has a cruel way of teaching you that love alone isn't always enough. I've spent so much time trying to be enough for someone who never saw my worth. I bent, I adjusted, I gave more than I had, hoping that one day it'd be loved the way I deserved. But love shouldn't be about proving yourself. It shouldn't feel like a test you're always failing, a battle you're always losing. It took me far too long to realize that love, real love, doesn't ask you to sacrifice your dignity. It doesn't demand that you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. It doesn't make you feel like you're fighting alone, holding on to something that has already slipped through your fingers. Because love should be honest. Love should be safe. Love should be chosen every single day, without hesitation. And if it's anything less than that, it's not love at all. I spent nights convincing myself that things would change, that maybe if I was just a little more patient, a little more understanding, a little less me, things would be different. I wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale, the one where love, no matter how broken, always finds a way back. But love isn't supposed to be a puzzle with missing pieces. Love isn't supposed to hurt more than it heals. I see that now. Walking away wasn't easy. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It felt like tearing myself away from a dream I had invested everything into. But staying would have been the real tragedy. Staying would have meant losing myself entirely. And I refused to lose myself for anyone ever again. I used to think that loneliness was the worst thing in the world. That silence, the absence of someone's presence, would be unbearable. But I've come to learn that there's a kind of loneliness far worse than being alone. It's the kind you feel when you're lying next to someone who makes you feel invisible. When you pour your heart out, but they're not really listening. When you're constantly begging for the bare minimum, but even that feels like too much to ask. I've been there, and I won't go back. Because for the first time in a long time, I am at peace. Not because I found someone new, not because I filled the void with distractions, but because I found me. I found strength in my solitude, clarity in my pain, and freedom in my choice to walk away. And that alone makes this entire painful journey worth it. People don't talk enough about the grieving process of leaving a relationship that wasn't meant for you. It's not just the person you have to let go of. It's the dreams, the promises, the life you thought you were building together. It's the little things, too. The inside jokes, the way they said your name, the feeling of waking up beside them. At first, it feels impossible to imagine a life without them. Even when you know deep down that they weren't good for you, that the relationship was toxic, that you deserved better, your heart still clings to the familiar. But there comes a day when the pain of staying outweighs the fear of leaving. When you look at yourself in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back at you. When you realize that love should never cost you your peace. That's the day you choose yourself. And that's the day everything changes. Healing isn't linear. There are good days and bad days. Moments where you feel free, and moments where the past still lingers in the corners of your mind. You'll wonder if you made the right choice, if maybe things could have been different. You'll miss the idea of them more than the reality. But then, slowly, you start to breathe again. You start to laugh without forcing it. You rediscover the things you loved before they came into your life. You realize that love, real love, was never supposed to make you feel small. And that's when you know. Walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I don't know if I'll find love again. I don't know if I'll ever want to put my heart in someone else's hands. And that's okay. Because for now, I am enough. I am enough as I am. Flawed, healing, learning. I am enough without validation, without someone else's love to define me. And I promise myself this: I will never settle for less than I deserve again. I will never chase someone who makes me feel unworthy. I will never mistake struggle for passion or pain for love. Because love, real love, is not something you have to beg for. It's not something that leaves you questioning your worth. Love should be given freely, wholeheartedly, without conditions. And until I find that, or until I decide I no longer need it, I will continue to choose me. Because, for the first time in a long time, I am free. And that is enough.